Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Today I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful crochet I-cord in the round like on this Crochet Yarn Cozy Light. To make a crochet I-cord, you're going to need two tools. You will need your hook that you have already been using, and then a double-pointed needle or a needle tip or any kind of tool that can act like a needle that is around the same size or a little bit smaller. So for this Crochet Yarn Cozy, I have been using a C 2.25 millimeter hook. And so I am going to use a double point that's also a 2.75 millimeter. Again, if you don't have double pointed needles, you can use a needle tip. You could even use a needle that's connected, a knitting needle that's connected to a cord, or if you have some type of like tapestry needle, we really just need something to hold stitches with. So this is going to be a two-handed affair. It is a little bit awkward at first, I will say, especially if you're not a knitter. If you're a knitter, you have a slight advantage because this is very knit-like, but it is all crocheted, but we're going to make an I-cord that looks like knitting. Pretty cool, right? So the I-cord's done in two stages. In the first stage, we're going to work all the way around our whatever you're making. This is for crocheting an I-cord in the round. And then in the second stage, we're just going to do one really quick thing that tightens things up and looks really, really nice. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to sew together the two ends of your I-cord and make it look very seamless. One other quick note before we get officially started, if you are not making an I-cord in the round, if you're wanting to do a flat crochet I-cord, there is one additional step that you're going to need. And for that, I would suggest watching Tony Lipsy, who is TL Yarn Crafts. She has a great tutorial on a crochet I-cord, and I will link that down below. So we will begin here at the beginning of the round. You can see this is my first stitch. I can go ahead and take this out. I'm not going to need that anymore. So we're going to begin with a small setup involving our crochet hook and that double pointed needle. So keep it handy. We're going to start by chaining 3. So just yarn over, pull through 3 times. So you should have 3 chain stitches. You're going to work in the back of the second and third stitch and pull up a loop in each. So not like the butt part in the back, just the back loop basically. So we're going to skip the first stitch, work in the back of that second chain to pull up a loop, the back of that third chain to pull up a loop. That's all of our chains. And then finally, we're going to pull up a loop in our first stitch. So that was my last stitch. Here's my first stitch, and just pull up a loop. And you should have 4 loops. Now, we're going to transfer 3 loops onto our double pointed needle, leaving 1 on the hook. So without twisting or turning them around, I like to do it one at a time, or if you're majorly skilled, you can do all 3. Just transfer 3 loops over to the hook, and 1 is left here. 3 loops onto the needle, and 1 is going to be left here for you on your hook. Now, grab that yarn again, and you're all set up and ready to start the repeat phase. In this phase, we're going to repeat these 5 steps until we have worked all of the stitches all the way around. So it starts with a chain 1. You've already got 1 loop here on your hook. Here's your yarn, so just yarn over and chain 1. Do not stress about pulling this too tight. Now we're going to slide 1 of those stitches over to our hook. So go in and slide it over. And then we are going to do another chain 1. We've got 2 loops here on our hook now. Now the next step gets a little different. We're going to slide both of these 2 stitches over to our hook and chain 1 with them together. So you can go into the back, slide both of those over, chain 1 pulling through both of those loops, and now you've got 3 stitches here on your hook. Now we're going to look at our next stitch right here. pull up a loop in that stitch, 4 loops again, and our final step is transferring 3 stitches without twisting them over to our double pointed needle. And now we're back where we started with 1 loop on our hook and 3 on our needle. So let's repeat those 5 steps. So the first one is to do a chain 1 with the loop that's already here on your hook. Then slide 1 stitch over. Does not want to focus today. There we go. Slide 1 stitch over by kind of going into the back of it and chain 1. Then with these last 2 stitches, we're going to slide them over together. So go through both of them and slide them over together, or you can just slide them over one at a time. But when we chain 1 and pull through, we're pulling through both of those last 2 stitches so that we have 3 left on the hook. We've used up all of our stitches on the DPN, so now we're going to pull up a loop here in the next stitch. And then our final step is to slide 3 stitches over to our double pointed needle. You're just going to repeat this all the way around until you've used up all of your stitches. Actually, once you've pulled up a loop in the final stitch of the round, that's where we're going to close things off, and I'll show that in a minute here at the end. But I want to show something for all of our knitters to make things a little bit easier, because this is very much like knitting. So if you're a knitter or if you're a crocheter, this might be easier to give this a watch. Same steps, we're going to chain 1, but when we go into to do this chain, I'm instead thinking of it like a knitter. I've gone into the back. I'm going to go ahead and do my yarn over and pull through here while everything is still on the needles. Same steps, I just didn't separate them by sliding the stitch over first. Then I'm going to go into the back of both of these stitches, a little harder, there we go. Yarn over, pull through both, then slide it off the needle. Same steps, just a little bit smoother. Then pull up a loop in that next stitch and transfer these stitches over. One more time. Chain 1. There we go. Insert, pull up a loop. Go into both of those last few stitches. Uh-oh, careful not to split. There we go. Pull through both, pull up a loop, and then transfer 3 to the double pointed needle. So you can already see that I'm getting a lovely little I-cord look here. So keep repeating that around until you have pulled up a loop in the very last stitch. This is not the end though, we've got one more stage to do. I've made it almost all the way around. I still have one more stitch to do, but when we pull up a loop in that very last stitch, that's when we're going to do something slightly different. So I'm just finishing off this last normal stitch, my second to last stitch. And now I'm going to pull up a loop in my very last stitch there. So I can see here's where my I-cord has started. And this is my very last stitch. So pull up a loop in that. And things are a little different here to finish off stage 1. Remember, we still have one more part left. So to finish off this, we're going to slide just 2 of our stitches over to the double pointed needle. Then we have 2 stitches here on our hook, and we're going to draw the second one through the first one to just close that off. So just draw it through, just like that. Then we're going to slide 1 more loop on over, and same thing, just draw it right on through. We're just binding off this I-cord, basically. And then the last one, slide it on over. This is our live loop. We're just going to pull that one on through. You can set this double pointed needle or whatever you're using to the side. We're done with it. Crocheters, I know you're happy to hear that because, man, kind of cramps up your hand. It's a little bit awkward. So that is the end of our first stage. You should have an I-cord all the way around your piece. It may look a little loose, and that's okay because we're about to tighten things up with our final stage here. Now, in order to start this final stage, we are going to take this stitch off of our hook and we're going to pull it through to the back. So we're going to draw it through in between the first and the last stitch of the round. So if I go in a little closer, here was that last stitch, here's the first stitch. So I want to bring this live stitch through right here. So I'm just going to bring my hook through in between, grab that loop, any which way, it doesn't matter, we can reorient it, and just pull it through there to the back. Now you can actually break your yarn because we're not going to be using our yarn for this last stage, but you do need to keep that stitch live on your hook. And we're ready for stage 2. For this final stage, we're going to be working in the vertical bars on the very back of the I-cord. So I like to just flip my entire piece inside out so that I can really see those vertical bars here in the back. So if you look underneath your I-cord, you're going to notice that you have these vertical bars going across the back of the I-cord itself. They look like this, and they're kind of going to be hard to see like further down, but they'll be easier to see once we get to them. So we're just going to start with the very first one that we see, which I think is actually this one here, and we're going to pull it through our live loop. So we've got a live loop here. We broke our yarn so that we won't be tempted to actually like crochet with it. We're just going to be pulling through loops. So grab that first vertical bar and pull it through. Then get your second one, pull through, and just keep working your way into these vertical bars. And what this is doing is it's creating one more knit-like stitch on our I-cord as we just scoop those bars and pull through. There should be one for every stitch that we created. But this is why you don't need to be pulling super tight when you do that initial chain 1, or else this whole row is going to be quite difficult. But yeah, you can just see it's just bringing things up so nicely together here. So just continue this all the way around until you get back to the beginning, and I will meet you there. I'm almost back here to the beginning. All right, and here's my very last vertical loop. So once I pull through that very last one, I'm going to take my tail and just draw it through that last loop, and you can just pull it all the way through to close. So we're done with the I-cord. You can flip everything back to the right side. It should look much more tidy now that we've done that last little part. Super, super cool. And the last thing we have to do is just to kind of smooth out this join part here where the I-cord begins and ends. So to close things off, I've got a tapestry needle. I like these bent tip ones. So we're just going to thread our tail. And then let's take a look at this I-cord. So this I-cord was 4 stitches, and I'm just going to use that to help me connect this gap here. So it's got 1 stitch here in the front, 1, 2 in the middle, and then 1 last one in the back. If you kind of roll the I-cord, you can see that. So the way I'm going to start here is with this back stitch from this side, and I'm going to try to match stitch for stitch between my 2 I-cord ends. So I'm going to come through, this is kind of like a duplicate stitch for my knitters. I'm going to come right underneath that last stitch under both of the legs, and then I'm going to come across to the very first stitch on this one Get a little more focused. Come on. And here's my very first stitch here and get underneath both of the legs of that one. So from the right, both times, okay? Now I'm gonna come back to that first side and find the next stitch. It's gonna look a little crazier, but I'm gonna try to get under both. Oh wait, that black part was the end. So I think I wanna go here. Yeah, let's try that. So both of those, again, right to left each time. And then I'm going back to this I-cord. So here's where I was before. So let's try to get that stitch next door underneath both legs of that. I'm kind of ignoring anything that's like the bind off parts at the end. Okay. Focus. I'm coming back to the first side. No, don't want to focus? Okay. You can do it. Come on. I know it's so hard to see because it's like that black right there. So that's where I just came out before of this stitch. So I'm going to get this next stitch right under the two legs of it. Then back to this side. That's where I came out before. So I'm going to get the next stitch, two legs of it, and I should have, that was 3 on each side, so I should have 1 more. And I'm just kind of like tightening up in between. See what it's doing, me going back and forth, is it's like making, well, not that you can see it, it's making another row of stitches here. Super, super cool. Okay, so I should have 1 more left on each one because I just came out of this stitch. So here's the last stitch on this side, go under both legs. And then the last one here on this side. Yes. Okay. So once I finish that off, I'm just gonna see how it looks. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty smooth. Yeah, that's not bad. And then to finish off, let me see if I can get that into focus. I want to finish off, so I've got half of this last stitch, and I want to loop that back around to here so it just looks finished off. So I'm actually just going to kind of like usually poke through. I don't know if I should go into the I-cord, maybe like right here. Oh, you can't even see that. In knitting, it's a little bit easier because you can kind of go underneath the I-cord, but in crochet, I just want to kind of, see how I've got that half stitch? I want to kind of finish it off by like going somewhere here and just like maybe poking through to the back. I don't want to come out of the I-cord. There we go. I think I just got underneath it. But that will just kind of finish off that last half stitch and make things look really nice and smooth. Now my end has just come through to the wrong side, so I may just kind of like weave it into the I-cord, or you can weave it into your single crochet or whatever you've done here. But I'm just going to kind of finish it off. I love being able to do that and make things really, really smooth. Anyway, you can finish it off however you see fit, but that should make it nice and smooth. And that is your crochet I-cord. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the crochet I-cord in the round. Remember, if you are doing a crochet I-cord flat, there's another step that you need to do, and I will link Tony Lipsy's tutorial down below so that you can find that. This pattern is the Crochet Yarn Cozy Light, and it is out now. I'll put the link down in the description box.